County Commission meeting to order. We'll stand for a moment of silent reflection. The Pledge of Allegiance led by Karen McGregor.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Karen. Next item is to review and approve the agenda. Does anyone wish to add or subtract issues from the agenda?
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hennies, Commission Office Manager. Today I would like to request to pull items 11 and 13.
Any others? Any others from the Commission? If not, the Chair would entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the agenda as amended by pulling items 11 and 13.
Second. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I voted aye. Next item is the consent agenda.
For full public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the Board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or citizen. Today, I've placed the following items on the consent calendar for your consideration. Approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of June 18th, 2013. Approval of the vouchers in the amount of $684,205.76. To authorize the budgeted E911 General Fund operating transfer as submitted by the Auditor's Office. To schedule a public hearing on July 16th, 2013 for General Fund Supplement SP 13-011 for the Juvenile Alternatives Expansion Budget. And finally, to approve the reappointment of Mr. Jim Coleman and Ms. Karen Hall to serve a second term on the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Does anyone wish to remove any items from the consent agenda?
I just have a question about the planning and zoning reappointments. Are they usually advertised before they're appointed?
Not per policy. They're allowed to sit a second term without being advertised in Pennington.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, the Chair would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is items from the public. And before we begin, you may or may not have read the statement attached to the items from the public, but I'll read it quickly just so we all are on the same page. The Board of Commissioners welcomes public input on policies and issues affecting county government and its function. Public comments shall be germane to the services or policies of the county. The Board takes this time to listen and consider, but not to comment. Action will not be taken during this item on any issues brought forth that are not properly noticed on the agenda. So the point is that anything that may come up today cannot be acted on, but could be placed on a future agenda. And we're going to begin with Sean from the Real Life Church with an issue that you have.
Thank you. I'd like to just ask for reconsideration of the denied abatement of our 2012 taxes for Real Life Church at 4024 Sheridan Lake Road. Your reasoning was that we didn't own the building. That building since 1985 has been a church. It's been a 501c3. It quickly went to bank and foreclosure, and that's where the tax window opened up. The city has approved our abatement unanimously. I have a letter from the mayor supporting that as well. I would like for the county to reconsider that. $11,300 to 60 families will cripple the ministry of our church. I can provide data showing you the amount of money from reaching out to homeless to ministering to the homeless students that far exceeds $11,000, but that will cripple a lot of that ministry. It's never not been a 501c3 and it's never been vacant. That building has always housed a church. The homeowners association that the church belongs to states in its bylaws that it can only ever be a church. It's not a for-profit business. It unfortunately went to foreclosure when the building church couldn't afford the addition that they put on it. They stayed in it. Another church moved into it, and then we purchased it. It's never been vacant, and it's never been a non-501c3 entity. So I'd like the reconsideration of your denied abatement to get that back on the agenda, to have it the 2012 taxes of $11,363 abated.
Thank you. Okay, the next item that we had sign-up sheets on relative to, and each item is relative to the ag classification and the tax matter. We have 11 people signed up to speak, and we just ask you to be as brief as you can. Previously, we've set a general time limit for a subject, but I think we can dispense with that today. And so I will call on you, and if at some point you feel that what you were going to say has already been said, that's your choice. First of all, we'll call on Dallas Diedrich. If you'd come to the microphone, please, and Dallas, you're first. And state your name when you begin speaking, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak for a few moments this morning. First of all, I want to thank you for everything you do for the county. I wanted to give the folks here the bottom line as far as what the impact of the 160-acre increase has done. So the bottom line for me last year, on $754,000 to assessed value, I paid $74.33 in taxes, and I was one of the properties that was targeted by the equalization office, and so my ag status was in jeopardy. And I went through the appeal process, and by going through the appeal process, the 102-acre properties that we had in 5 parcels, the bottom line for the tax for us then through the appeal process was $9,600. So it went from $7,433 to approximately $9,600. And just a few days later, then the increase was to 160 acres. And so the impact for the tax for me next year then would be $14,811.14. So in essence, my taxes have doubled in just the stroke of the one meeting, and so therefore it's not a burden, it's an extreme hardship on us for being able to pay the taxes by the increase in 160 acres. I would request that you reconsider the increase to 160 acres and put it back on the agenda for reconsideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Robert Drew.
Sit or stand here?
Yes, speak into the mic.
Note so I would take up as little time as possible. My name's Bob Drew from Hill City, and I'm just speaking on behalf of the Mills Family Partnership Ranch and hopefully the sentiments of some of the 466 people listed that this would affect, I would suspect more than that. And first, there seems to be a lot of misinformation floating around, so that yesterday my family and I went and visited the zoning and several other county offices, including equalization, try to unscramble some of the facts from fiction. And when we waded back into the traffic late yesterday afternoon, I noticed tears streaming down my wife's eyes, which indicated to me what we feared, and that is having to sell the land her grandfather and all the rest of the family had worked since 1907 to preserve a way of life and pass that ownership on to offspring. We've been told that we are a minority of minorities, and there'd be no point in coming here and voicing ourselves. What has been done is done. However, I don't believe that to be the case. We've known for years that taxes were going to go up on ag land by the acreage requirements, but suddenly 4 times as much, excuse me, we remembered back the cattle free by 93 cry that went out in the 90s and didn't come to pass, but it certainly indicated that farming and ranching were not too welcome tax-wise. And these pretty hefty laws going into effect certainly would impact more than just those of us that are here today. The young folks starting out in ranch business who don't have the required 160 contiguous configuration will suffer, and many of them are leasing ag land from elderly retired ranchers, pasture and hay land, and some that are currently cattle and hay and timbering operations. But the last point is that we feel it will strongly affect tourism, which is one of the main draws for Pennington County attraction. If we end up with urban and suburban developments, some of this beauty will be obscured for future generations. I'm a World War II veteran, combat veteran, which makes no difference here except that we fought that war, and the subsequent conflicts were to come home and take part, resume farming and ranching, or be able to buy land. Sometimes the GI Bill of Rights helped out with those loans, and land was purchased. However, now at 87, with multiple medical problems, I don't see that dream is going to be a reality. And I thank you for the time to talk here, and I thank the commissioners, particularly Peterson, for opposing this, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Leslie Rudder. Did I say that
My name
right?
is Leslie Rudder. I spoke before, so I don't really want to take up any time going, saying what I said last time, but I did take some time last evening to sit down and put my thoughts into writing. And I would like to give each of you a letter that I wrote, kind of stating how this will in fact impact my family, my parents, my brothers, and myself. And I hope that you will take 60 seconds to read this and consider what it'll do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, well, I'll just do it, okay.
Thank you. Chris Redden.
Good morning. My name is Chris Redden. I'm a property owner there in the hills. And we have so many different aspects that go into the classification of the ag and how it came about and that. One of the things that if you just do one of the quick down and dirty calculations is that it's your present budget of 81 million. it's dollar for dollar because you have to have a balanced budget. If you add on the 1.6 million that you're anticipating and receiving from 466 property owners, that's less than 2 cents per dollar increase. But then also part of your equation is the fact that you get more revenue, your expenses go up because there's no way that expenses can stay stagnant, whether it's personnel or anything else. So you do have a big job in trying to fund that. I think the biggest thing is, as when Mr. Lindell Peterson had said he voted against it due to the time constraints. I think that's for the most part what the vast majority of the landowners want, is that this be brought back up for reconsideration, that you have a core group of taxpayers that get together and discuss it with the commissioners, and that then we don't have to continue to go through our public input and all that. But is that you can work together rather than just one side saying we're going to do it and the other side screaming, no, don't. And especially, you know, for the average, you're talking about per acre, $3,400. Well, how many people, including yourselves, if yours all of a sudden went up that far? But anyway, we just really, truly do request that you put this back on the agenda, and that we do get together with a core group and work at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Chrisman.
Good morning. I have a copy of what I want to say, and I'd like to give to the whoever. Who I hand this to you, Linda? Yeah. There's 4 or 5 copies in there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. Good morning. I'm Ted Chrisman, and I'm just going to read this. This is just personal dollar figures of what it's costing me. I'm a Pennington County landowner. I own 70 acres of land 9 miles from Hill City on the Reno Gulch Road. This land has been used for grazing of livestock and hay production since it was homesteaded by Guy Simpkins. I use it for the same purpose to this day. If this land is removed from the agricultural tax roll, this one last piece of my family heritage will be lost. I want to give you some dollar figures so you will understand why that would happen. In the last 5 years, the total income the land has generated is $5,408.75. Just a partial list of the expenses that I have occurred for the last 5 years is $11,013.61. This does not include taxes and other expenses also. You might ask, why would I keep the land if all it does is cost money? The answer is because it is the one meaningful thing that I have been able to hold on to, and I've always hoped to be able to give it to my children as their family heritage. This will be impossible if the minimum acreage requirement criteria for agricultural land increase as proposed from 40 acres to 160 acres. I'll tell you the reason why. My 70 acres lies in a valley that is also the home of two 30-acre pieces of land that are nearly identical to mine. In fact, the width of the section line separates one of the 30-acre pieces from my 70 acres. Those two 30-acre pieces of land are taxed as non-agricultural. The average tax per year for those is $143.33 per acre. Based on these figures, my land quite likely will be taxed at $10,033.10 per acre, or 10 cents or more per year, as compared to my last 5-year average of $139.28 per year, which is extremely low. This is an increase of over 5,900%. So including the taxes and my expenses, the figure comes up to $11,709.51 for 5 years, and the income from my land is $5,408.75, which is a loss of $6,300.76. If these 70 acres that I own are taxed as non-agricultural, I will be forced to try to sell it or give it to a charity. As a reference for you to consider, my entire Social Security income for a year would not pay for the taxes for 1 year on this 70 acres. I realize that there are many critics of those of us that have property and pay taxes based on the agricultural rate. I've heard people say time and again, it's about time those people pay their fair share. I hope that hearing the actual numbers that I have given you today, particularly the number of 5,900%, which is the amount my taxes would increase, will help you and others understand why we so badly want you to reconsider your decision and possibly the definition of fair share. If every taxpayer in the county would consider what their taxes would be if overnight their taxes were raised 5,900%, I think they too would be asking for your reconsideration. I sincerely appreciate your time, and I beg you to reconsider your decision. My entire future is riding on it.
Thank you. Brenda, I can't read the last name. Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, when I first heard about the news of the tax and the acreage increase, I looked up the definition of what agriculture really is. When I drive down my half-mile driveway and I see all of our tractors and our windrowers and we ranch, we've worked very hard at what we have. I don't get where your formula came up with for the acreage. Because when you look into the definition of agriculture, it basically is the science and the art and the business of cultivating soil, producing crops, and raising livestock, farming. Nowhere does it say acreage. Mm-hmm. So to take such a big jump like you guys have done, I'm trying to figure out where those guidelines fall. Because you can still take a small acreage in this day and age, because to come up with 160 acres in this day and age to buy it, and then to try to ranch off it or farm off it, it's almost impossible. Normally, you inherit a large amount of acreage, and then you're blessed and you can work with that land. But to pay 160 acres and then try to run a ranch off it is almost impossible in this day and age. What we normally do is we buy a smaller acreage, and then we lease ground so we can ranch off, get our hay off other properties. It works well for us. We pay our taxes every year at the end of the year when we do our United States government taxes for the IRS. We have to deduct everything that we have put into that ranch and claim everything that we have got off the ranch. So I'm sitting back and I'm trying to figure out where you guys came up with your formula, and I'd really like you to just stop and consider it, because there's a lot of people here that work very hard on their properties. You guys are welcome to come out to my ranch and look at it if you want, because it's less than 160 acres, that's for sure. But we are the hardest working people out there. So I'd like some consideration.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Bratt.
Good morning. I'm Jack Barat. I'm a Pennington County taxpayer and have been for the last 36 years. I wrote up a little statement here, and I've titled it Rush to Judgment. I recently had the opportunity to watch the 21st May commission meeting where the commission decided to change the minimum acres from 40 to 160. I think you all would agree that there are two sides to every story: black, white, pro, and con. Apparently, the Director of Equalization prepared a packet which he provided to the commissioners of information regarding all of the positive virtues of any such change. In his presentation, the Director of Equalization said approximately 466 properties would be affected by such a change. It was also brought out that there would be an estimated 96 million. When you get into those big numbers, I have a hard time with them. Okay, an estimated 96 million in new growth to the county. I personally don't understand how raising people's taxes increases new growth. However, over the past several weeks, you have heard from many of the people who are here and have explained to you what would happen if this is allowed to occur. I may be wrong, but I doubt that anyone has declared it would be a benefit to them. There are three things I believe that you should do. First, contact all 466 property owners that could be affected and ask them how they will each be impacted, either positively or negatively. Number two, it was said during the commission meeting that the monies, additional taxes that would be raised, could be used to reduce other taxpayers' taxes. This then begs the question, how much will it actually reduce everyone else's taxes? I'd be willing to bet the reduction that it would amount to wouldn't be enough to justify all of the confusion and problems that this issue has already caused. And I might also add that the motion that was made and passed on at that meeting did not include reduction of other people's taxes. Since the Director of Equalization seems to be very astute in putting together figures, let his staff and department be tasked with the job that I've outlined and suggested in number 1 and 2. This work can be reviewed by one commissioner who voted against the increase and one who voted for it. And it might be well to have a couple of private citizens sit in on that just to make sure that the information produced is not biased or prejudiced. What we really need is impartial information. I mentioned that there were three things that you should do. The third thing is stop this change from happening until you have all the facts presented and that the implications can be looked at. You have already received what might be considered the positives, but you also need to know what the negative things are and how this change will affect other people. Further, this should be done because it's the right thing to do. There should not be a rush for judgment until all the factors have been carefully and wisely considered. Thank you.
Thank you. John Henderson.
Morning. It is still morning, isn't it? Thank you for the time, the opportunity to speak to you. A lot of the things, I know your time issue and all that, a lot of the things I was going to talk about have kind of been touched on, but there is one issue that I don't think has been addressed in any of the meetings I've been to, the comments that I've heard. And the issue, and I'm going to call it green space. Anybody in here who knows me is going to say, John is talking about green space, but for lack of a better term, that's what I'm going to talk about it. This change in ag classification will make it absolutely impossible for landowners to hold on to their land because of taxes. So my question is, then what happens? They end up having to sell their land, subdivide the land. You put in subdivisions with individual. Now, I'm on Spring Creek in the Hill City area. You put in subdivisions with individual septic systems and wells. Pennington County has made it very clear the issues with wastewater treatment systems, on-site wastewater treatment systems. The demand on additional wells, if the subdivision route is the route that it ends up going, then you have runoff from streets, parking lots, erosion, gravel roads. There's been this, ongoing thing about the Spring Creek watershed project. So then the second thing would be, then do landowners end up going the route of putting in seasonal biker bars and campgrounds like Meade County allowed around Bear Butte? What a shame that was. What a shame it is. It's just an embarrassment and a shame. Now, what about the Spring Creek watershed project? It goes on and on and on and on, and there's been a lot of to-do about it. And it's not necessarily all bad, but if the Spring Creek watershed is such a big issue and such a big problem, how would it make any sense to encourage, or not encourage, but force people to subdivide their land so that you end up having a bigger problem? You might really end up with hogs on Spring Creek, except this time they'll be on two wheels. That's a joke. Anyhow, it's not just the Spring Creek watershed. It's all the creeks in the Black Hills, or all the creeks in Pennington County. And it's not just in the hills. It's out on the prairie too. It's Box Elder Creek, Spring Creek, Reno Creek. It's all the creeks in the hills. And what about the impact that it's going to have? And I'm not Mr. Environmentalist, but what about the impact it's going to have on the environment? Third thing that landowners would be forced to do, and I know some that are considering it, and that is to just give their land away. Give it to a church. It'll be nonprofits. And then your bottom line, which is truly your bottom line, is not going to make sense. Because instead of paying some taxes, they'll pay no taxes. And I know at least one woman who's willing and ready to do it. Either you give it to a nonprofit, turn it into subdivision, or you turn it into campgrounds and commercial property. So, that being said, I would like to say that there are according to your County Director of Equalization, 35,092 acres of quote-unquote green space that will be gone. 35,000 acres in Pennington County, gone. They talk about the green space in Rapid City, and it's important. I understand that. But you will lose 35,092 acres of green space to development of some kind. I'm here to say we are the green space. We spray the weeds. We cut the bug trees. We cut the hay. We put food in the stores. And I hope that we provide feed, water, and habitat for the wildlife. So I hope that to all the residents of Pennington County who are not affected by this, rather than looking over at the fence at the neighbor and wondering why they pay more taxes than we do, I would ask them to consider, and you, the commissioners, to consider and recognize when you're out and about in the county that someone is paying a price to keep that quote-unquote green space so that other people can enjoy it. They can use the Mickelson Trail. They can go up Reno Gulch. They can go out in the prairie and hunt grouse. They have a place to hunt deer, whatever it is. So I hope that you, the commissioners, and other people, residents of Pennington County, particularly the residents of Rapid City who don't understand what it's like, I hope that they will recognize that this green space is because we're there providing it. And just don't take away our opportunity to do so. I respectfully ask you to reconsider your decision on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Olson.
Good morning.
So much has been said that echoes the sentiments, I think, of all of the people that are directly impacted. But I just want to share one more fact with you that you may or may not be aware of. With our understanding of the state statute in which we could ask the state's attorney to appeal the decision, at that point we thought it was an ordinance or a law. Now we understand it's a motion. And I've sat on dozens of publicly held corporate boards, and I know what the motion process is and how they can be repealed, how they can be tabled, how they can be amended. But we have over 600 signatures from people throughout Rapid City and some in the county. Most of these, the majority of these, are not people affected directly by the ag status, but also recognize the problem associated with this issue. And my point is, I would like to see the motion repealed and a thoughtful and time-given opportunity for input into address the real problem, going back to the genesis of the law on property. And I think we have a voice much bigger than just the people impacted, represented by signatures that we obtained in a 24-hour period, mind you. We did not go out, and we haven't been at this day in, day out since when we learned of this. This happened in a 24-hour period, and over 600 residents of Pennington County said this needs to be addressed. And so we respectfully ask that you repeal your motion and allow for a committee and proper due process and input before such a decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Ehlers.
My name is Adam Ehlers, and I'm here to just state a few things that I found out in my research. First thing I'd like to reiterate is, for those of you that haven't watched the commissioners meeting, go to YouTube and you can search Pennington County Commissioner or Commissioners May 25th or May 21st, 2013. Go 21 minutes in and watch the whole, the voting, the discussion on the actual motion. So go to YouTube, type in Pennington County Commissioners, go 21 minutes in on May 21st and watch it. A little background is, from how I understand it, Commissioners Ron Buscaroo and Don Holloway requested a report to be given, a report to be made by Shannon Rittberger about changing the minimum acres for agriculture land from 40 to 160. This report was reviewed for 1 week and then brought up on the agenda and voted on. No public input was taken, even though it affects 466 property owners. I don't think there was any discussion. I think they just went for the highest amount of acres as possible. A little background on that, I believe originally it was 5 acres minimum to be considered agriculture, then it went to 20, and then Pennington also later on went on to go to 40 acres minimum. Now we've quadrupled it and went to 160, so it just doesn't seem to be a linear increase. So we went 5, 20, 40, and then to 160, which I think is a rather big jump, especially considering that most of the mineral surveys and stuff in the actual Black Hills are 20-acre parcels. So I think it's going to be very difficult for somebody to get 160 acres. I think 160 acres was the biggest mining claim you could place, and I don't think there was many of them. And plus, they've been taken, a few acres have been taken out for easements and roads. So to actually have exactly 160 acres is very difficult to do, from my understanding. I think it should be a little less, at least, 155 would be maybe close, maybe attainable, but I still think the majority of the people won't. Sorry? The next thing I wanted to talk about was a few of the discussions on that May 21st meeting in the commissioners. One of the things that was brought up several times was, well, we have a house that's $700,000 on 40 or 50 acres, and they're classified ag. That's not what the land is, because look it's used for a house, it's $700,000. And I just want to point out that these people the house is never considered agriculture. It's always non-ag. So if they have a $700,000 house, they're going to be paying $10,000 to $12,000. The most expensive one is paying $18,000. If you change the land that it's sitting on to non-ag, they're going to be paying an additional $3,000. I'm guessing that these people with $700,000 houses aren't going to pack up and leave if they have to pay an additional $3,000 in taxes. Whereas the other person, the farm kid that buys 40 acres from his parents and is running cattle on it and hopes to be a full-time rancher someday but still has a job in town, that jump of $3,000 is going to be substantial to him because he's probably pulling in $30,000 a year at a job he has in Rapid City. And he's probably not making much off his cattle if he has a little 40-acre parcel, but he's using it for ag, but he won't make the income requirement. And now he won't even come close to being to the agriculture, minimum acres for agriculture. The 160, I think, is very high. And I think now Pennington County will be only, I think, is the third one that has 160 acres in all of South Dakota. A couple interesting things. I did get a hold of the report that you guys were given and reviewed for 1 week before you passed this motion, is that 17 is the number of houses that are over $500,000. Out of the 466 people that this affects, 17 of them have houses over $500,000. That's 3.6% of the 466 people. I find this, if this is the main reason why the motion was made to go after these very expensive houses on ag land, you're going after less than 4% of these people, of the 466 people, and making the other 96% of the property owners go along for the ride. I think that the Director of Equalization and the Equalization Department would be able to do this on a case-by-case basis, go through the requirements, there's 17 of them, and go through the requirements and see if they do meet the agriculture requirements. There's 3. You have to be a farmer and make a third of your income. You have to use it for ag use. And before, you had to have 40 acres. So you have to meet 2 of the 3 requirements. I don't think it would take the Department of Equalization's staff very long to go through and check to see if they meet the requirements. And if they do meet it, that's the statute. Let them have it. But if they don't, take it away from them. Another thing that I would like to state is there's been talk about legislature and getting the statute changed. And I just wanted to let you know, I have a few of these. I didn't expect so many people to come today. I'm really glad with the turnout. I thought everybody would be on holiday. But there is a Ag Land Assessment Task Force up in Pierre. And this is 6 legislature people and 6 private individuals. And they're a committee, and they go through, and there's a public input for ag land assessment. It's July 25th. It's a Thursday. It's 9:30 in the morning. It's in room 413 at Pierre. And I think it would be very good if we could get some people to go up there and give some public input and give some testimony or suggestions on ag land assessment. and maybe even something where the state just sets it and makes everybody equal, where they just say it's a flat 40 acres for the whole state. It's not going to be different in Lawrence, which is 41, and Pennington, that will be 160. Just make it flat so everybody's fair and everybody's the same. I will say that I was happy that Ken Davis at the last commission meeting actually kind of did a little survey. I think that's about the only thing that I've heard of or seen been done, asking who lives on 20 acres, 40 acres, 60, and so on, to get a feel of what kind of acreage they're talking about. Because I think there should be a lot more work done, more discussion, and I think it should be brought up on the agenda, at least for discussion amongst the commissioners. So thank you very much for your time. If you want, I have some sheets for information. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That completes the list of people who signed up to talk. I realize there may be someone who came in too late to sign up, and if so, I would entertain at least a few if you have something new. So, did you wish to come up?
My name is Glorine Hunt, Rapid City. I own 40 acres, non-owner occupied, non-ag. I pay $7,593 taxes. I'm not complaining. It's my choice for what I'm doing with my land. And I know that the people here consider that they have much bigger issues than just 40 acres. But my main complaint is to stop the propaganda on us 40-acre people. Most of us pay taxes. If we have proper reporting with our media, we can probably cut down on a lot of the complaining that's happening. And it's impossible to try and figure out how many of the 40-acre people which claim to be ag are not really ag. And if they aren't ag, why doesn't Director of Equalization and his staff stop what's going on? We're paying their salaries. If they can't figure out whether 40-acre piece is ag or not, then we need to take a look at Director of Equalization offices. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Pamela Kammer. I'm a landowner in Pennington County. I have 40 acres. I am listed as a non-ag because of the easement. So I'm short an acre of the required ag requirements, so I pay non-ag taxes. And I do think it's important that people understand that even though you're setting it this at 160, that may not fit the bill, because even though you have 160 acres, if you have any easements, roads, whatever, then it knocks you down and the county doesn't recognize you. And I think that's unfortunate. The other thing is I called and checked about how many parcels, tax-paying parcels we have in this county, and the closest they could give me on this short notice was between 48,000 and 49,000 parcels that are taxed. So of that, the 466, we are less than 1% of the whole, and yet we are going to be charged an extra, generating an extra 106 million on less than 1%, and I just think that's kind of a travesty. The other thing is that this kind of got pushed through fast, and I think a lot of people didn't know about it. I think it deserves a little more attention that it's received. I think it's terrible, all the things that have been in the paper about the slander of we need to pay our fair share. Do these people have any idea of how hard of a job it is to be an ag person? And the amount of time that is absolutely, I don't get paid to go spray my weeds. I don't get paid. I have to buy my water when I irrigate. I have to pay people to come in and help take care of things. I have my land out on shares, so I get a portion of it back like everybody else does if they share it. But what happens to all these farmers and ranchers that lease ground and then the ground is gone? What happens to their base? Because a lot of these farmers and ranchers that do have bigger properties are dependent on the people that they lease ground from to make their properties work. And So I just think that overall, this 160 acres, do people understand that if there's any easements on it, then they don't even qualify? So I think you're really doing a disservice to the people as a whole. And to put this big tax burden on less than 1% of the taxpayers is a travesty. We're some of the hardest working people, and I know, Lindell, I don't know the backgrounds of the others, but I know, Lindell, that you understand this. And it's important that the whole Pennington County understands it. We're being ridiculed all over in the paper, and these people have no idea. And as county commissioners, maybe the record kind of needs to be set straight that we're hardworking, we're honest people. We are not out there trying to cheat or not do our fair share. But we in turn need your help to keep this at 40 acres or less. Over in Russia, they have given people public lands, 7 acres, and these people have changed their country over there by producing apples and potatoes and growing things off little 7-acre parcels, have totally changed around portions of that country on as little as 7 acres. And we're griping about 40 and trying to change it to 60. I think we're kind of backwards in that, and that if we were given a little bit of help, we can make a bigger impact and not being taken away from. Thank you.
Morning. Thank you for your service to our community. My name is Susan Nolan, and I live here in Rapid City. I don't live out in the hills. But I want to make a comment about what decision you make affects everybody. It affects me too. Even though I'm not a landowner out there, I'm a biker, a hiker, and I'm married to somebody who is a casualty of this decision. I'm married to somebody who owned land out along 385 and because of exorbitant taxes sold the land. That land was a beautiful pastoral meadow. Bikers would stop along 385 just to look at the area of the hills there. That land was sold to somebody who's going to have the option to develop it, to put a lot of houses in there, to put one house in there. I'm not sure. But as John Henderson said, it was green space. It's not going to be green space anymore. What it is today is a beautiful meadow with long grass that we've sprayed for years so there's no thistle in it. Land that runs with a creek through it, Horse Thief Creek runs through it. It's beautiful land. And it was at one time green space. It was places where people stopped just to enjoy the beauty of the scenery. That's a big issue. We have lots and lots of tourists who come to our part of the country, not because of the strip malls, not because of the shopping centers, not because of the biker bars, but because of open space. And I'd like you to consider really what this decision does on so many levels. You've heard the heartbreak of people here who've made their living on this land and who'd like to bequeath this land as my husband really would have liked to have given it to his children. They can't afford the taxes. It's burdensome. And this restriction or change is so onerous for people. We live here because we love the land. People in the city have a great affinity for the land. These are our friends. The land is a place where we go for solace and for recreation and for just to be able to be in a place where you're not crowded with people. This kind of change will make a difference in the way that life is in these Black Hills. So I really ask that you reconsider this decision, and you've had some wonderful ideas from people about how that might be done. So thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the democratic process.
I'm Patsy Henson. We own 40 acres out in the Pine Grove area. We are trying to do some organic things out in that area with grapes. Anyone who raises grapes or organic knows it's a very time process in order for it to produce anything at all. And we've continued plugging along. We've owned the property since 1990. I wanted to break down, I know we've heard a lot of figures. I simply wanted to break down some figures from your letter from the Shannon Ritberger that you received on May the 15th. One gentleman already alluded to the 96 million estimated new growth in assessed value. I have problems finding where that would come unless the land was broke up and sold off, and then houses were there, and that property, that 96 million came from that. If you just take an average of 96 million divided by the 466 taxpayers, that would impact directly, and this would be an average. That means their land would go up $206,008. And that's an average. Also, if you look, he said that there was $112,000 estimated current tax of ag property on these impacted parcels. And if it was changed, it would go up to $1,650,000 estimated that same property if it was non-ag. Well, when you divide that difference of about $1.5 million by the 466 property owners, what that equates to, and you divide it by 12, people's, on average, their taxes would go up approximately $300 a month. And I just wanted to break it down into smaller figures looking at a monthly. Most people who had a $300 expense come in all at once would go, wow, maybe we should be selling. And I do appreciate the job that you folks do. I know it's a thankless job. I retired as a school teacher. But you guys in the school board, people who serve on the school board, you're in a no-win situation often. And I do appreciate your service and the things that you do for our community. Someone's got to do it, and thank goodness there are some of you who step up and do it. I do respectfully request that you put this back on an agenda, work with perhaps a committee and have some exchange, and maybe we can come up with a solution that is workable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. This will be the last speaker. Thank you.
Daniel Kyer Labor. I'm from Newcastle, Wyoming. There's been a lot of input from the Rapid City area, Hill City area, but you also need to know that it impacts people in Newcastle and Wyoming. I'm not here just on account of myself, but other individuals from Newcastle. And I appreciate the respect that's been afforded the commission and not taking a lot of your time, but I want the commission to realize how much time you've taken from these individuals here. And I'm here to talk about a particular piece of property. It was a homestead of 160 acres is what was filed for. The Forest Service, which borders it, took back 17 acres. So now it's only 143 acres. Therefore, does not meet the 160 acres. That happened many years ago. The gentleman who homesteaded it raised a family there. And that property is still in the family. Nobody lives there anymore. There's no electricity for 15 miles or more, if you want electricity. There's no water or sewer system there. It's, well, we logged it here 6-7 years ago. Another 20 years, it'll be ready to log again, maybe, if the bugs don't get it. Other than that, it's had cattle run on it. And that's what it is used for, is cattle. Every year, not over the winter, because generally come November you can't get to it. There's been times in June we had to walk in the past several miles in order to get up to it because it is not readily accessible. It is not going to be residential property. It is not going to be subdivision. It is agriculture. And with what his motion has been made, as I understand it, without exception for this property, it can't sustain itself. And more than likely, what's going to happen is it'll get turned over to the Forest Service. That won't be tax property for the county anymore. Thank you.
Before we proceed further, I'm going to ask the commission to grant me the personal privilege of moving items from the chair up on the agenda to now. Sure. Okay, thank you. I want to thank you folks for your courteous conduct here today. You've shared a lot of things with us. In the mix of things, as I see it, several people have said things that reminded me. There is a lot of misinformation. There are perceptions that are based on just nothing but your own feelings. And this business of who pays their fair share, when that comes out without it being based on fact, I think is disruptive and not contributing at all. And the thing I want to point out is that several years ago, prior to this commission, a study was contracted for by the county commission with some folks in Colorado, that the title of it is A Cost of Community Services Study of Pennington County, South Dakota. And it uses COCS as an acronym, which is the Cost of Community Services. This study was done and turned in, I believe, in 2009. But one of the things it has in it is a comparison of agriculture and open space, commercial and industrial, and residential, 3 categories. It then places the tax paid by each category and the services, government services required by each category, and evaluates those on the ratio, with 1 being dead even. If you paid your taxes and they covered all of the government services that you required, that would be a 1. Anything above a 1 means that you got more services than you paid for individually. Anything below a 1 means you paid more than the services you got cost. I hope I don't confuse you. But this study indicates that agriculture and open space, on an average, scores 0.50. In other words, it costs less in services than the taxes it pays. Commercial and industrial scores 0.37, which means it pays even more taxes than the services it requires. Residential scores 1.29. In other words, they get more services than their taxes pay for. This is information in the study. It's, I assume, a public document.
Yeah, it is.
It is here in Pennington County, and I think it provides some information that may be the foundation for further deliberation. So with that, I will thank you again, and we'll proceed with item 12 on the agenda.
In front of you today, and it's a Deerfield Road Highway easement deed from the National Forest We're going to do an overlay on Deerfield Road from Tigerville out to the end of the asphalt, a mill and overlay project. We had and this is using federal aid funds. And I started years ago, and about 4 years ago, I was successful in getting a 150-foot wide easement from the city of Hill City all the way out to Tigerville. And now this will take it from Tigerville out to the end of the asphalt. And hopefully, if that other project goes through, all of Forest Highway 17 will have a 150-foot wide easement, which cuts a lot of the red tape out and any improvements in the future. Right now, if we go outside the 66-foot, we have to have a special project and special authorization from the forest to do anything. This gives us a 150-foot corridor, and that should just about cover any repair work or slide area, or we can cut trees in that 150-foot without special permission. And so it just makes it a lot easier to maintain that right of way. So this morning I'm asking for commissioners' approval to sign the highway easement deed from the Forest Service for Forest Highway 17 and authorize chairperson's signature.
Is there any expense in this?
No expense.
I'll make a motion to go ahead, have this chairman sign the highway easement deed. Or I guess Heine, if he's got that authority, I don't know.
Well, the chairman has to sign it. Motion to approve the highway easement deed for Forest Highway 17 with the U.S. Forest Service and authorize chairperson's signature. That should be the motion.
Oh, that is it.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Fourth.
You too.
You too. Okay, items 11 and 13 have been pulled. Item 14 has been done. Committee reports.
I don't have any, Mr. Chairman.
Probably the most important thing to visit with you about is that I attended a Black Hills Community Health Board meeting on Thursday, and we had a very quick review of some of the studies that they are doing for space. And they, of course, are including our Health and Human Services Office as a possibility of being a part of that project. We, this is just a preliminary, but we were thinking our max would be about 10,000, but even with gross space, we're around 8,500. So it is smaller than what we'd originally thought. And they will be bringing some more specific information to the building committee. We aren't going to have a building committee meeting today, but we will in 2 weeks, and then we'll get a more detailed report, and then we'll present that to the commission.
Okay, thank you. I attended the Extension 4-H board meeting last night. Lots of activity going on, very busy people. Nothing, in terms of changing direction or anything, but they're concerned about their budget, and beyond that, we're certainly getting good results with the kids. I guess we have to wait till
10:30.
10:30 for planning and zoning, so
Could we is there executive session? Oh, okay.
Okay.
My
Can we
goodness.
get the jail visit done in 20 minutes? Yeah, we can, but.
so we will be in recess till 10:30.
Okay.
Back to order. Next item on the agenda is items from planning and zoning.
Good morning, Dan Jennison, Pennington County Planning Director. The Board of Commissioners uses the consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine planning and zoning items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. The consent agenda for planning and zoning items contains the following items. Item A, the second reading of rezoning request 13-10, U Lazy 2 LLC, Robert Schmitz, Fisk Land Surveying as the agent, to rezone 10.29 acres from General Ag District to Limited Ag District in accordance with Section 508 of the Pennington County Zoning Ordinance. Approval is recommended. Item B is the first reading and public hearing of rezoning request 1302, Jarvis and Francis Olson, Fisk Land Surveying as the agent, to rezone 7.65 acres from Limited Agricultural District to Low Density Residential District. And our approval is recommended.
Does anyone wish either of the items or both to be pulled from the agenda? If not, Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda of the planning and zoning as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda from planning and zoning. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Make a
Thank you.
motion to go to our annual county jail visit per SDCL 24-11-26, and the press is welcome to come because it's still in our meeting.
He might end up staying there, but do we have a
They'll
second?
fingerprint you, that's for sure. You might,
How long is the tour?
I don't know.
We need one more motion.
Move to, oh, go ahead.
make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.